Change doesn't happen overnight, especially in Washington, D.C. So you'll have some time to kind of plan for that.
Business being an organization or an organism, your cash flow is your bloodline. Nothing functions if you don't have the cash flow to make it happen. Hey, what's up? Thanks for tuning into this segment of Coffee Shop Q&A, where I typically bring in experts in the business world or in the personal area to talk about their story and their expertise. This week, we're joined by Chris Hervochon, who is the founder of his own CPA firm. Chris works not exclusively, but primarily with service-based businesses, typically your marketing agencies and things of the like. And he has a new ebook called Scaling the DataDriven Agency. So how you can use numbers to scale your business. So today we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about the election. We're going to talk about COVID. But most importantly, we're going to talk about how to navigate 2021 to make sure that your business is set up for success. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here, Joey.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And now, where in the world are you joining me today?
I am in Hilton Head, South Carolina.
Ah, nice. So you're probably just a step away from the beach.
It's a little bit more than a step, but it's pretty close. Yeah, we're in a good spot.
That's awesome. Awesome. So I've got to ask, growing up, were you always a numbers person, or how did you find your way into accounting?
Fair to say I was always a numbers person, but whoop.
You're good.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought I lost you. But, I've always kind of been fairly entrepreneurial. I was always the kid who was, out on the corner trying to sell lemonade, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And actually, it's kind of funny because my son's the same, my oldest son, and I don't know where he gets it, but he gets it. But the way that I got into accounting, I originally went to school and wanted to be a finance major. I wanted to be an investment banker, and I had absolutely no idea what an investment banker was. And my dad was an accountant. His background was in accounting. He was the CFO for an insurance company, and he said, you can do everything in accounting that you can do in finance, and then maybe a little bit more. Maybe go that route. So I listened to his advice. I did. I had taken accounting in high school. It did not go well, even a little bit. But I had a great accounting professor my freshman year of college. She was an inspiration to me and really kind of tied the pieces together about how, accounting, like the base debits and credits, which is the nerdy stuff, ties into how to operate a business and what it means, what financial statements mean and things of that nature. So that's really kind of how I got into it and just fell in love with it. And when I actually graduated college, I was a golf pro and played a little bit of golf in college, and decided I wanted to turn pro and give that a go, and did that for about 5 minutes, and then realized, maybe I should go try to make an actual living because that wasn't going well. And got into forensic accounting and, spent a few years there, and finally got into corporate accounting and finance, started a side hustle, which is what my firm is now. It's the evolution of that side hustle that started 10 years ago. So, here I am.
Awesome. And kudos to you for navigating life and landing into something successful. Cause we all have those goals of like, hey, let's go and try something. And I know you're a much better golfer than I am now, but it sounds like the accounting is more of your sweet spot than pro golf.
It is now, that's for sure. That's absolutely for sure. My golf game isn't worth a hoot right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that accounting is so important as a business function because I think of business being an organization or an organism. Your cash flow is your bloodline. Nothing functions if you don't have the cash flow to make it happen. And so I'm really excited that you're here talking with us today about some tips to look into 2021. But let's kind of do a retro real quick and think about businesses and how they've navigated this pandemic. From your client base, what have been some of the most successful steps that people have done to preserve their business and to maybe even position it to thrive in the midst of of this sudden change that we've experienced?
That's a great question. Back in, I guess it was March when the lockdowns happened. We basically came up with a 5-step playbook for all of our clients, and the nuts and bolts of that were, think of what number one was: think of creative ways that you can generate revenue over this next period of, at that point, we were saying 3 to 4 months. Just think creatively about how you can drive revenue and thus drive cash to your business. Make sure that you're talking to your clients, making sure that the invoices that you have outstanding with them are going to be paid, seeing how they're doing. It's just a good neighborly, humanistic thing to do, to reach out to people and see how they're doing. And then the other thing was basically preserve cash was the other piece of it. Cash is going to be king. And if you're not paying attention to it, then we need to be forecasting it. And if we're not forecasting it, then we need to put a process in place to forecast it. And at that time, what we were looking for was to get through July. When we were in March, we were saying, let's get through July, because that was kind of the guidance that we were hearing at the time. Is like month, 2 months, we'll be back to normal. So we said, well, that's not all that comforting. Let's take that out a little bit further. So, it's with a lot of our clients, we've been kind of going through this process of talking about the cash reserve every single month, making sure that it's sufficient. Paying attention to what revenue looks like, paying attention to what pipeline looks like, the stuff that's going to happen in the future. Asking clients, like, what are your clients saying? How are they doing? And, just keep continuing to forecast cash. And so when we do that, we ask, what's the drop dead date? So when you take your current cash balance and then you add in all the expected inflows and then you subtract out all the expected outflows, at what point, if you have no more revenue, are you expecting to totally run out of cash? And what's that date? And does that date keep moving further and further into the future? And if it does, then okay, we're still okay. When it starts to move closer, that's when we need to be doing other things. The businesses that have been successful and that are still thriving have come up with different revenue models. They're delivering their services in a way that's different, that is helpful to their clients, considering where we are. So that's part of it. And then the other ones are managing cash well. They're cutting expenses. They're being mindful of what they're doing with cash, what they're doing with debt, and just managing the business proactively.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think a good defense is the best kind of offense, especially in this kind of pandemic world that we're living in. And I love that you mentioned being able to creatively pivot your business model and some of your offerings to best support your customers. As we look into the age of possibly having a vaccine, I'm seeing folks talking about returning to work in maybe January 2021, or not so much return to work, but return to office 2021, because a lot of us are working remotely. As you look into 2021, what are some of the key tips that you would share for businesses to maximize the year that they may have in 2021?
I think 2 things that we talk about with our clients all the time still apply. The clients who we have that are consistently successful do 2 things really, really well. One of them is manage cash and manage cash flow. That's always going to be, a thing. Just because it's going to be 2021 and we're getting rid of the weird 2020 year, that doesn't mean that that's going to go away. You still need to pay attention to that, especially in a period of uncertainty. You need to have an adequate cash reserve in your business. So that's always going to be a core component. And I see that staying the same in 2021. I don't see that changing even a little bit. And then the other piece is the business plan. Clients who we have that do really well are really clear about what their business plan is, and they revisit it on a consistent basis. They know what they do. They know how they do it. They know who they're trying to serve. They're just really, really clear, and they've got a really, 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 really clear strategy. What we see is when folks get impatient and they start to straddle multiple strategies and they start to get a little bit, just unfocused in their business, that's when things start to go sideways or start to trend downward. So, I would say, have a plan for 2021, revisit it, be willing to pivot, but don't be unfocused, manage cash. And then the other thing is just be patient. I think we're going into, especially, we're recording this here at the end of October, we're going into probably a period of the most uncertainty that our country has ever seen, just where we are with an election and with COVID and, all that other stuff. just be patient, be focused.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on whether or not strategy should be dependent upon who's in office in January?
That really depends on what your business is.
Tell me more.
So if your business is dependent on government and government contracts, then yeah, that you certainly need to be paying attention to who's in office and think about how they're likely to spend money and award contracts and things like that. If certainly I think if Biden wins, we're likely to see changes to the tax code, which obviously is going to have an impact on cash flow and how you need to plan, and whether or not they're going to get rid of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was passed late 2017. That would remain to be seen. That certainly changes the math. That changes the math on your entity structure for sure. So that those would be the things to look out for. I think if Trump remains in office, probably we'll see more of the same business environment that we've seen. I would like to say prior to COVID, but certainly there's going to be some sort of a period of time here where we're transitioning back to some sort of a normal. But I think you could expect to see TIC is supposed to expire in 2025. I would expect that you would either see that be made permanent or at the very least would run out through 2025. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it depends on who wins on what sort of environment we're going to be in, and change doesn't happen overnight, especially in Washington D.C. Theoretically. So you'll have some time to kind of plan for that. But on November 4th or whenever we get some sort of a result, you need to have that in the back of your mind. What's this going to look like for me and the environment that I'm operating in? Because the environment that you're operating in is one of those factors that goes into that business plan. You need to understand your environment. You need to understand your competition, and you need to make some assumptions and revisit those assumptions on a consistent basis.
Yeah. That's great to hear. Making sure that you're navigating this each step of the way and making decisions each step of the way, I think is a fundamental takeaway from everything you've said. Because it's like the weather; we can't predict it, we can't cause it, but all we can do is respond to it in a way that works best for us.
Yeah, exactly. And the further that you go out with your assumptions and your forecast, the less certain it becomes. I mean, I'll speak to my business. I can tell you pretty clearly what my business is going to look like next week. I cannot tell you very clearly what it's going to look like in a year. Mm-hmm. And I most certainly can't tell you what it's going to look like in 10 years. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You just need to be patient. You need to be revisiting your assumptions. You need to be having conversations with your leadership team, with your advisors on a consistent basis. People who are looking out, looking outside of the business, looking outward to see what, understand what they see, take all those perspectives into account, and then, change course or not, depending on what they say.
Yeah. Chris, you have a new ebook entitled Scaling the Data-Driven Agency. Could you tell us a little bit about that? What led you to write the book? Who's it for? And what's the benefit of taking a look at the book itself?
Sure. And I appreciate that. So there is a new book. It's called Scaling the Data-Driven Agency. It's about 50 pages. It's very, very digestible. It goes straight through our playbook on how we think about scaling marketing and creative agencies. It's tailored for those folks, but it certainly is very readable and very applicable to other service-based businesses. And basically, it's all about taking the data that is inside of your business, or thinking about the data that you want to be inside of your business, and then how to best leverage that to grow the business. So good example, especially for marketing and creative agencies, is project management data. They've all got to manage projects. Those softwares that they use, like an Asana or a Monday.com, or even as so much as a Google spreadsheet, those are all data sources that we can use, and we can marry those with financial data and then figure out, what's what in the business, where do we need to make changes, how can we grow the business. So the book basically just goes through, our exact playbook of what you need to consider, how you need to apply it, and then how you kind of go through this cycle of revisiting it on a consistent basis.
What's the danger of not revisiting your data on a consistent basis?
Well, things change. right? The environment, we just talked about it. The environment that you operate in changes. The operations of the business change. Everything changes. If you're not willing to revisit, what your data is telling you, then that's how you become stagnant, right? Your competitors change. The tools that you use change. There's just that's the only constant is change. And one of my favorite quotes that I've that I've ever heard was from an accounting conference that I went to 2 or 3 years ago, and the CEO of the AICPA, Barry Melanson, said the pace of change is never going to be slower than it is today. And if you kind of just think about it, that statement has been true every single day for the last, however long.
Yeah,
and it's not going to change. Right. The pace of change is just getting faster and faster every single day.
Yep.
So you need to stay ahead of it. You need to be looking outward, not always internally, to facilitate change in the business and to keep yourself competitive and to make sure that you're delivering the best products and services to your clients.
Yeah. Chris, I'd imagine you've seen a whole host of businesses, those that have done well and those that have not done so well. I asked you the question, what's the danger of not looking at your data? But what are some other financial no-nos or some financial habits that could jeopardize your business?
The biggest one that we see is commingling. The absolute biggest one. It's generally smaller businesses where that's a problem. And what they will do is they will either not have a business bank account and they'll just use the personal, or they'll have a business account, but it's kind of sort of personal. It's kind of sort of business, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. At some point, you've got to untangle that. So that's an enormous problem that we see. Not leveraging your accounting software, not having the proper chart of accounts. What that means is having the proper categories for how you want to classify transactions.
Yep.
So you can actually make decisions based off of that. Not assigning customers to revenue transactions, not assigning expenses or vendors to expense transactions. Those are big ones too. Because really, at the end of the day, accounting is about being able to answer questions about your business. So you want to be able to ask a question about your business, and then you want to be able to get a good, accurate, reliable, timely answer back about your business. Great example being, when it comes time to cut costs, and you're looking at your P&L, and it's like, all right, well, why am I spending, $20,000 a month on software subscriptions? That number seems really high. It needs to come down. Well, if you drill down into that account and you see all the transactions and you don't know which vendor is which, you don't know where where the expenses actually came from. Mm-hmm. If there's something in there in the software account and really it's a contractor and it's not actually software, that's a problem, because now what you've done is you've asked a question about your business and the response that you got back was, I don't know, which is never a good thing. Accounting. What I say to my team and what I say to our clients is, we are here, number one, to provide certainty. And then number two, we're here to ask really hard questions. And that's really what we do. So if you can ask questions about your business, if you can get good, solid answers back, that's what, accounting and financial data is here for.
Yeah, that is exactly right, Chris. And I think about the shock and surprise of businesses that may not have been so savvy or at least diligent with their finances when it came time to apply for PPP or EIDL or all the sorts of funding, where maybe this is the first time that they've had to have a banking relationship in this way. And you had to have that information on the ready to present, a P&L and chart of accounts and those things. So if 2020 has taught a lot of smaller businesses, emerging businesses, something, it's your accounting is incredibly important and you never know when you're going to need it. But the reality is you should always know that you need it.
100%. And having an advisor who can explain it to you if you don't know is huge. I mean, if you think about late March, early April, when PPP came out and we're in a lockdown, everybody's business has been shut down. The government basically says, hey, we're giving away free money. And everybody's like, well, I need that because, I got to feed my kids and I got to pay my mortgage. And, and so how do I get this free money? It's like, okay, I need a copy of my P&L. Well, what is my P&L telling me? And then it's, I need my payroll records. And well, maybe you're an S corp and you haven't been paying yourself reasonable compensation. So now that the loan amount that the government's going to give you is too low because you haven't been paying yourself enough for the last 10 years or whatever it is. Yeah. It's got that snowball effect. And if you were trying to simultaneously understand your financials and they were kind of a mess, and if you simultaneously were trying to take advantage of these loan programs and you didn't have anybody there to help you and kind of walk you through it and who was paying attention to the regulations and how it impacts you and how you can take advantage of some of these things, you're taking a really stressful situation on top of a really stressful time, and everybody's stressed out, and it's terrible, frankly. But having somebody in your corner who can help you with that, who can help you in tough times, having a banking relationship, having a business coach, whether or not it's somebody from like SCORE or the SBA or whatever it is.
Yep.
Having an accounting relationship, having a legal relationship, those are all super, super important on top of having your financials in order and understanding them and having good financial data.
Absolutely. So the moral of the story is, if you didn't have your P&L for your PPP, you need to call Chris and get a good business outsourced CFO. My last question for you is obviously I run an outsourced HR company. We work with businesses and become their HR department. But for a startup, for a small business who doesn't quite understand, they may think CFOs are for like Fortune 500s or CFOs are for more established businesses. What's the pitch? What's the why for getting a chief financial officer, an outsourced chief financial officer, taking a look at your business finances, no matter the size of your company?
Sure. Generally, folks get into business because they know how to do the work or provide the product or provide the service that they're going to provide to their clients, right? It's not usually because they want to dive into the financial figures unless they're an accountant with an accounting firm. Mm-hmm. That's it's few and far between. So, and it's the same for HR too. Like in your business, like generally the people don't have HR experience. They don't know what they don't know. So having a group of advisors in your corner who understands your business, who has seen it before with other businesses, who knows what works and what doesn't work, who can prepare you for the things that are coming down the pike, who's looking out and looking at regulations, government regulations, and seeing what's coming down the pike from a tax perspective or from a PPP perspective, whatever it is, or who's looking at the economic conditions that you're either operating in or you're about to be operating in. It's totally invaluable, to have that kind of advice that's proactive and not reactive, and that is helping you to make good decisions based on good data and based on prior knowledge. It's just, I think, totally invaluable. And that goes with, any other area, like I said, HR, legal, anything that you don't have expertise in. You either need that expertise, so you need to develop it yourself, which you probably, that's time consuming and, it's a headache, or you need to go and hire that outside or inside, but you got to get that expertise from somewhere so you can be most successful.
Yeah. My rule of thumb is know it well enough to know if it's going right or going wrong, but you need to bring someone in who knows it well enough to maximize that area of business for you.
100%.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I've enjoyed having you on the show. How can people contact you? How can people learn more about your business? And where can they go to download Scaling the DataDriven Agency?
Absolutely. So betterwaycpa.com/DataDriven Agency. That'll take you to the ebook. My contact information's on the landing page. It's right there. You can't miss it.
Thanks, man. When I get down to Hilton Head, I'm going to ask you for some golf lessons. So just be on the lookout for that call.
I don't know that you want a golf lesson from me, but I would be happy to go out and, play 18 with you for sure.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds like a deal, man.
Thanks, Joey. I appreciate it.
All right.